Hello, my dear Franken-friends, and welcome to Spookyou, your one-stop shop for all things ghastly and ghoulish. I'm your host, Barnabas Vixen, and, well, we've got something very special for you tonight. You see, long ago, before this channel was ever created, there was another creation by our vivacious voiceover virtuoso, Trey Falco. The Tom Worley Cases Podcast. It follows Tom Worley, detective extraordinaire, as he solves cases in the town of Medimaville, where all manner of spooky and supernatural things are normal. Ghosts, ghouls, goblins, and geists? Check. Werewolves, shifters, and vampires? Oh my! You get the idea. Anyways, we wanted to share this with you all because it seems to fit so well into the narrative here on our channel, and so over the next couple of weeks we'll be uploading the episodes right here on Spookyou. So without further ado, on to tonight's story. Oh, and one more thing. Due to the nature of these podcasts, we will not be interrupting them in the middle with our typical sponsor breaks. Sorry to our dedicated sponsors out there, but we're sure you'll understand. Okay, here we go! Between the cracks and receding darkness of this world lies another, living and breathing, always shifting just out of view. It's there that the true terrors that haunt your deepest dreams dwell, and they're watching, waiting, ever vigilant. I'm Thomas Dean Worley, a consulting detective for the Medimaville Police Department, and these are my cases. Life has a way of sweeping us off our feet and into the dirt and pavement of our problems. It's here that you have a choice to make. Stay put and get trampled, or get back up and throw the next punch. As you'll no doubt observe in these cases that I'm about to share with you, an evil stench exudes from every piece of information that I've collected over these years. And by listening to this, you're listening at your own risk. There's no way to tell who or what may be watching, and they aren't too keen on having their dirty laundry aired to the public. They will find you. It's only a matter of time. There's something humbling about waking up in a sterile place, surrounded only by the sounds of families visiting their loved ones, echoing down the hallway from distant rooms and breathing some sort of life into your own. But I guess it was always meant to be this way. I've gotten pretty good at pushing away those that care for me the most, and this solitary ring on my finger serves as a constant reminder of what my life could have been like. The sweet smell of her perfume and her hand in mine would go a long way in driving away this nagging feeling of isolation. If only I could have played the role of a better man, maybe she'd still be here today. Maybe then I could be more than just a walking bottle of bourbon and self-destructive tendencies. But wishful thinking can only get you so far, and I'm not ready to forgive myself for putting her in that situation to begin with. No, the only solace I'll find is in Nuri standing behind bars and paying for the crimes that he's committed. That's why I've got to get up and out of this hospital bed and over to Dromer's before he slips away. I started forward from my horizontal position, but stopped once the pain in my abdomen intensified, leaving the room spinning around me. I tried to sit up once more, but once again brought back down by the pain. It felt like someone had taken a molten poker and jabbed it straight into my side. I figured they'd give me something for the pain, but I guess that's too much to ask for. So I took in a deep breath, prepared myself, and forced myself into an upright position. The pain shot through my body like buckshot, and I almost toppled back down. But I managed to keep myself sitting, though the room swayed and distorted momentarily before returning to normal. With a great heave, I stood up and stumbled a few steps before regaining my composure. My legs were jello, supporting an uneasy mass. But I had to do it. I had to make it to Nuri. The first steps were the toughest, but I quickly found my stride. The pain started to subside into a dull throbbing rather than a sharp stabbing. No telling how long that'll last. The easiest way out would be, of course, by turning invisible and just strolling through the doors. So I concentrated, and my body flickered into and out of view. It's better than it was before, but it's still not good enough. That phantom toxin must still be in my veins. As I pranced around my room, retraining my legs on how to walk properly, I could make out voices coming up the hall. And that nasally pitch was all too familiar.
I'm not sure, ma'am. He seemed to be in pain, but I didn't notice any signs of blood. He tends to drink a lot, so he could have just passed out from too much alcohol consumption.
The voices continued to grow closer. I didn't have time to think, only react. I sort of half jogged, half stumbled over to the window. Second story. The voices stopped right outside the door. They were conversing in the hall. I checked my room. Only one door leading out. I tugged on the sheets that covered my bed, and they seemed to pull loose. So I yanked them off and began tying them together. It may not be much, but a few feet is the difference between walking out of here and rolling. Once my makeshift escape device was done, I tied one end of the bed and gave a strong pull, and it rolled towards me. Of course they have these things on wheels. No matter, I can still use it. I rolled the bed over to the window as the door handle started to move. No turning back now. I stepped up into the window, threw the bed rope down, and prepared to scale towards freedom. 2 feet on the outer blocks and the door still hadn't opened. Thanks for the distraction, Clark. I climbed down, looking more like an awkward monkey descending a vine than a man determined to take down a budding crime lord. And as my feet planted on the soft grass and I made my way through flower beds and bushes, I could just make out the exasperated voice of Clark coming from my hospital room.
Tom? Tom, you get back here. You're in no shape to be running around right now.
Next stop, my office. I tend to keep a spare change of clothes in there for when things get rough. I needed to get out of this hospital gown and into something more practical. I brushed past Janice sitting at her desk. I admire the dedication, but I could do without that infuriating curiosity she tends to show in times like this. Don't you ever take time off? We're closed for the day. Go home. Be with your family. She tried to protest, but only uttered a few syllables before I slammed the door shut behind me and locked myself in. I rummaged through the old armoire behind my desk and found a half-empty bottle. I took a swig, or 3, for good luck, placed it back inside and finished getting dressed. I glanced at the small clock sitting on my desk, 2:27 a.m. Looks like I wasn't out for very long. I slammed my fist onto the far right corner of the desk and a small compartment snapped open. I reached underneath, fumbled around for a few seconds, and finally retrieved the contents. Old Faithful. She's seen me through many unsavory run-ins. I placed the revolver in my holster. Hopefully, it won't be necessary. Now to head over to Drummer's, infiltrate and exfiltrate with Nuri in hand, and bring him to the police station. It sounds a lot easier in my head. I parked a quarter mile away from Drummer's and hoofed it on foot the rest of the way. I approached the fence on the outer perimeter. Barbed wire topped the towering metal barricade. I scanned a few yards to my left and right. But there didn't seem to be any breaks. But about 50 yards away, there was a gate with a guardhouse. I crept closer to get a better look. It seemed to be an outlet for the various trucks that made their way in and out of the facility each day. The guard out front swayed slightly, probably due to the drowsiness of it being so late. I strained to peek inside the guardhouse from where I was at. It seemed to be empty. So I grabbed a rock, and as the guard nodded off for the 3rd time, I threw it, shattering the window of the guardhouse. He perked up and turned around, startled at the sudden crack and raining of glass. And he scanned around him, so I dropped to the ground, that way he wouldn't see me. And it worked, because he turned back to the guardhouse and took a few nervous steps towards it, raising his gun. Then, perhaps with a little too much aid from my liquid courage, I stood up and rushed forward. Before he had a chance to react, I grabbed him by the back of his head and slammed him into the wall of the house. And he dropped unconscious to the ground. I grabbed his body and drug it into the small shack. Having disposed of the gate guard, I had finally infiltrated the grounds of Dromers. But I noticed a lot of foot traffic on the east side of the facility, a lot of people coming in and out of the entrance. This has to be one of the side entrances the links had suggested. I'm not really sure how he expects me to make it through here. There's not much room to slip in unnoticed. I crept in between some parked vehicles nearby to get a closer look. 2 guards on the door, and every few minutes or so, someone new would walk in or someone familiar would exit. I crept even closer and nudged something with my leg. A gas canister. So I picked it up and gave it a shake. There seemed to be a good bit left inside. And then an idea came to me. I waited for a break in the traffic, and then picked up the gasoline, making my way over to one of the vacant corners of the building. After a quick glance to make sure nobody had been following me, I poured the gas all over the walls and grass before lighting a match and dropping them. An eruption of flames marked the distraction I needed to get inside. I stealthily made my way back in between the vehicles and observed. And as the smoke began wafting towards the guards at the door, the panic set in, and they abandoned their post. Amidst the panic, I seized the opportunity to make a break for the door. Guards scrambled into view from the cracks and crevices of darkness like a swarm of cockroaches scattering to avoid the light. I slipped inside the building and finally found myself within the inner workings of Nuri's operation. I wandered down a few stark hallways, avoiding human contact, and eventually, after trying a few doors that led to small storage rooms and large empty rooms, I found one that brought me to an overlook of the entire warehouse. I could see the bustling business transpiring below me, dozens of people manufacturing Nuri's product, Crypt Dust. It was like a well-oiled machine. It would go from the cooking process to a place to cool and settle into large sheets before someone would break it into smaller pieces and grinding it to dust. After that, it moved to the packing station and bagged in large canvas bags which were ready for transport. And the bags, well, they were given to well-dressed men and women who would leave the room. My best guess? To haul it into town and various shell businesses Nuri had set up to distribute his drugs. This must have taken years of planning and execution to get to the point that it is now. And it's been right under our noses this entire time. Or maybe those of us that can make a difference chose to turn a blind eye instead. And then an overweight figure stepped out of a door about halfway down the warehouse. Nuri. Now that I had confirmation he was here, I needed to let Medimaville PD know. Because going in without backup would be a death wish. Karen answered the phone and I had her put the chief on. I explained the situation and he agreed to send some uniforms over. Shouldn't be more than 20 minutes, so I wouldn't have long to confront Nuri before they broke down the doors and swarmed the place. And then a soft click from behind me and the forceful push of a gun barrel to my head signaled my cover being blown. I guess I wasn't as quiet as I had hoped to be. He ushered me down into the warehouse and to Nuri himself, and with a sharp kick to the back of my legs, sent me into a kneeling position. I could feel the presence of the man behind me, and I knew the gun was still fixed on my position. Well, I wanted to find a way to approach Nuri. This isn't exactly what I had in mind, but I think I can make this work. Thanks for listening to the Tom Worley Cases podcast. If you like what you hear, then make sure you head on over to our Facebook page and give us a like at facebook.com/The Tom Worley Podcast, or follow us on Twitter at Podcast Worley. This episode was written and produced by Trey Falco. The voice of Tom Worley was Trey Falco. The voice of Clark was Jake Alexander. The main theme song for the Tom Worley Podcast is Noir by No Copyright Sounds. Other songs used are Filthy Dark Club by Rob Cavallo, Acid Jazz by Kevin MacLeod, Schoolyard Spy and Bleak Horizon by Darren Curtis. Noir can be found by visiting the channel No Copyright Sounds for YouTube on YouTube. Filthy Dark Club can be found by visiting Rob Cavallo Music on YouTube. That's Rob Cavallo, Cavallo Music on YouTube. Acid Jazz can be found by visiting Incompetech.com. That's INCOMPETECH.com. Schoolyard Spy and Bleak Horizon can be found by visiting DarrenCurtisMusic.com or by searching Darren Curtis on Bandcamp. That's Darren with 2 R's, Curtis on Bandcamp.